It's a great song. I hate to cut it off, but these guys got things to do. We got things to get to today. So,
Yep.
okay. Well, let's go ahead and get going here. What wins are we having? What good things are going on? If you'll just unmute and share what's been happening, guys. Chris, I saw you on mute. Yes.
Yeah, 30 seconds ago, I closed a $40,000 job. So right before I came on this call. So that's nice.
Sure.
Yes. Love
Flip,
that.
a small flip, helping a guy out who's flipping a house. So
Love
Awesome.
that. Yeah, that's phenomenal. What other wins do we have going on this morning? Going once, going twice. Maybe we'll ask again in a little bit when more people are on board. But Chris, really appreciate you sharing. You'll have to let us know how that job ends up going and the profit on it, because that's almost more important than the revenue. So keep us posted on that, and congratulations on that. If you have a win, feel free to put it in the chat. We'd love to share with you. We know some of you are in the field, so just share it when you can. But let's go ahead and get going here today, guys, on what questions that you guys have, or maybe something you learned this week that might be valuable for somebody else, or um, go ahead, raise the hand, put it in the chat, whatever you do, unmute, tell us what's going on. Wow.
Yeah, this is new. Robert's intimidating everyone.
I think another way of asking this question is like, why did everyone show up here today? Like, what were you guys hoping to gain? What are what's like, are you wanting to learn something? Like, we can go into something here, like an idea and a thought, but the way that we're wanting to structure this is almost like you guys get another one-on-one coaching call, but you get the benefit of having all these other contractors here to help you with their experience as well. And so, that's, I think the question is, hey, why did we want to get on this group call today?
I'll ask a question here, I guess. We're kind of in the growing stages. One way people grow, I guess, business is through mergers and acquisitions. And I was, I guess, curious, has anyone experienced that? Has anyone tried it? Is it a viable way to grow your business? There's a gentleman on here, I don't know, 4 weeks ago, something like that. And that's kind of what he did to grow his business. And curious how people structure deals, I guess, and what's the best way to move forward in that?
Yeah, so that, first of all, Kevin, I think there's a bunch of other questions I'd want to ask about your business and about what's working for it right now before I would recommend, hey, the best next thing for you to do would be to buy a business. I just don't know enough about your business to make that call. And that's a really important factor because, if there are marketing opportunities, what I like to call, like I talk about this with the team a lot. Hey guys, with our clients, we want to find the low hanging fruit. What are the low hanging fruit opportunities? Something that they could possibly emphasize more, or something that they could be doing where there's market share that they're not doing, advertising wise to grow. Could it be a hiring problem? What's the lowest hanging fruit opportunity? So that's the first thing I would recommend to look at is, hey, have we really pursued all the lowest hanging fruit opportunities in order to definitely say, hey, we're doing everything right and we still want to grow. At that point, the merger or the acquisition may start becoming more of a thing that you want to look at. In terms of how to actually answer, so the answer to your question is like, yeah, that's a legitimate way to grow. The only kind of downside of doing that is, buying a business can be expensive. And so, even if you have a lot of cash, like it's, depending upon what kind of business you're buying, I think for most of the people on here, like, could probably sell their business at the lower end for $500,000 or so. Sorry. At the higher end, I think, it could get into the millions. I met with a client that I've been working with for a long time, affordable building concept, yesterday. And he's going to exceed 5 million this year, and he's making nearly $1 million in profits. That's where business starts. You can really sell your business for like millions of dollars. And the way that those deals are typically structured in small business and the construction space, there's a few different ways to value an organization, right? So, you can take all the cash in the bank accounts, combine that with all the assets of the business, combine that with the liabilities or the debt of the business, whatever's there, and come up with a price that way. The more common way is not that. The more common way is to actually come up with a what's called EBITDA multiple. Okay. Some people may know what EBITDA is. Some people may not. EBITDA is a financial term that stands for earnings before interest, tax, depreciation, and amortization. And, that sounds kind of complex, and figuring out that number, if you had a really good bookkeeper or accountant, it wouldn't be too difficult. But another really quick way to think about that number is just your net profits. What are your annual net profits, right?
And I understand most of that. Like, I mean, we bought this business essentially, and I mean, we've been in other businesses, so I understand that aspect of it, right? And normally it's a 1 to 2 or 1 times 3 times EBITDA kind of thing, right?
Well, it depends upon the size of the business. Like, for this client that I was meeting with yesterday, if they're doing $1 million in profits a year, if their top line revenue is exceeding 5 million, they could get into 4x or greater multiplier. So yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. I guess my biggest thing right now, like, there's Nicole can vouch for this too. There's lots of low hanging fruit that we can, get. I think one thing I'm running into is the structure of the business isn't what I want it to. So essentially we're subbing out everything, whereas I want to get into kind of halfway subbing out things and then having crews on the side, right? So also running for us. And I guess to go from one and just start up the other, there's huge cost in that anyways. Whereas you could just buy a business like that that's already running that way and already hit the ground running, I guess, is the benefit I see of that structure.
What are the costs that you're anticipating incurring in moving to a new model? You said, because it sounds like you're almost equating the cost, and so I'm curious.
Essentially, like any asset you're gonna have to buy. So there's gonna be trucks, there's gonna be tools, there's gonna be, overhead. All of those kind of costs are gonna be concurred with running that type, like that model of business, I guess, versus what we run right now. We essentially have minimal assets, and subs do everything. They have their own tools, whatever. So
yeah. So here, what I would recommend if I was coaching you, is I would say to begin pursuing the low-hanging fruit and the new model first before considering buying a new business.
Yep.
The reason why is because the first thing that's going to be different is that those costs additions are going to be incremental, right? So you're not going to necessarily like go out and buy 5 trucks at once and hire, 10 guys at once and do all these things that you would if you were buying a company, right? But you'll slowly begin to work into a new business model, which actually, I think if you take a more incremental approach, you'll find that the costs are not maybe as big as they seem. And the only reason why I say that is because if you're subbing everything out right now, that's what it sounds like you're doing, right?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. We're 100% subs. Yep.
So I run a remodeling business where we have 5 carpenters, right? And we sub out all the kind of main stuff too, the trade work. So HVAC, electrical, plumbing, all that kind of stuff. But we have a solid team of skilled carpenters.
Yeah.
And we're still running at a high net profit margin. And we do have costs, and we do have the overhead associated with payroll and these different things. But because we're not working with as many subs for everything, we're making more profits on our work. Because whenever you're paying a sub, even if you're paying a sub that is giving you a really good deal or isn't making much profit from your business, some of the costs that you're paying them, it's still for their profits, compared to the direct costs that you're incurring by hiring and building your own team. Yeah. The other thing that you have is you have a lot more control, which allows you to manage more, get more projects done, get more projects added to your calendar. And so it's like you can add more to the top line while keeping the expenses. They technically would be considered variable expenses or cost of goods sold, but it almost becomes fairly predictable what those expenses are so that you can add more margin to your profits. Yeah. And so again, my recommendation would be, while that is a totally different way of doing things, I agree that is the low-hanging fruit for you and maybe a lot more accessible and profitable to pursue than buying a new business.
Yeah, Kevin, as your coach, you've got the tiger by the tail here with all that's going on right now. And so although this could be a good opportunity, I think gathering this information for the future, and kind of having it on your tool belt is awesome. Yeah. But right now it's like you can probably create something bigger and better than what he already has without making that investment, Yeah. And so right now, even though one thing that Robert kind of taught me is that sometimes a good opportunity at the wrong time can actually be a bad opportunity.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. And I'm thinking the future. Like this isn't today. Like I'm running out doing something. I'm always 20 steps ahead, trying to be 20 steps ahead, right? So
that's smart. Yeah.
Well, sometimes, like you said, that's the tiger by the tail, not the head, right? So
well, Kevin, and kind of speaking of that, and Christopher, so I definitely will make sure that your question gets asked. One thing, Kevin, that you and I have been working through is kind of a cost plus pricing model and kind of moving into that direction. I'm curious if you have any questions about that, because I know that a lot of clients have been moving into that direction.
I'll tell you what, I'll have questions on that next week.
Okay.
I haven't had a chance to look at that yet, but that's my plan this weekend is to look at that. Yes. And we'll definitely have questions about that next week. So
okay, perfect. I love to hear it. Christopher, I see your hand up.
Hey, I walked in right on as Robert was talking about subbing things out and stuff. So, I do a lot of remodeling. Actually, I'm going today to, we already demoed a bathroom, and I'm going to meet. At first, the designer was taking the lead, but then she called me. She said, I can't do this. You hire everybody. You do all this. It's too complicated. I was like, you damn right. But so I'm going over there to meet with the client. And, and it's a family member of hers, and just go through my normal process, with her since I'm taking the lead. One of my goals is to sub more things out. And like I have a few sheetrock jobs that normally I go do, but, I'm like, you know what? I'm not doing it. Like I got to have the other guys go do it. So like on this bathroom remodel, like you were saying, Robert, about, you may have some guys, but you sub a lot of things out. Now, are these like actual sub crews, or are they like companies that do it? Because one thing that I've always found is like, you get this group together of different guys from different companies or different sub crews, and they all have other work outside of yours too, and coordinating everybody and doing all this and that, and everybody, their accountability is a little different all around. Like, how do you, in like project timeline, getting those guys all together on one project with everybody's different schedules? Like, I've just found it difficult.
Yeah, so that's like, I would say that's the main thing you're getting paid for as a general contractor. The value that you're bringing is solving that difficult problem for the customer, which is why, what we do is we charge a contractor fee at our cost plus pricing, but we also charge a project management and scheduling fee because of all the work that's involved in what you just described. And so I have found that like the subcontractor game and the hiring game for any construction business is almost this never ending cycle. Like I mentioned a moment ago, we have 5 good guys, but in the past year, we've probably gone through 10 different people that have started and that we've had to let go, or, have left, or we've said, hey, let's wrap things up. This isn't working, to get to those 5. And we just have like literally have never stopped hiring and looking for people this entire year. And so the same thing though applies for the subs. Is what you described, hey, are these just sub crews or are these companies? You're kind of describing the same thing. I think the difference that you may be talking about is it sounds like when you're talking about companies,
or their pricing,
Yeah, exactly. Maybe brands that invest more in marketing, that want to be more of a, working direct with the customer type of brand, versus a guy that just gets referrals and knows GCs and has a few decent guys on his crew, doesn't market real well, but stays busy because, he has relationships with GCs who keep him busy. And so to me, it's really about a combination of finding those subs that are reliable, number one. You can make people reliable in the way that you treat them. So do you, as a general contractor, pay them on time? Do you make clear expectations ahead of time of when you might need them? Are you planning out a project from end to end before you start the project? Something that we do that's really helpful is we split projects up in phases, right? For larger, like how much is your bathroom remodel that you're doing?
I'm taking over everything custom. I mean, I'm imagining, it's a small 15 to 20,000.
Yeah. So how long is that going to probably take you? Like 6 weeks?
No, it shouldn't. It shouldn't. I mean,
okay.
I would
So
say hopefully like 3 to 4. I mean, if I get everything lined up good,
That's what I was hoping you would say. Because a project of that size shouldn't take long. And so I'm talking about the phase thing, I'm talking about commercial projects. So for a project like that, though, you could probably take an hour or 2 and literally plan out everything that needs to happen when and what subs that you need. And then what you want to work towards is almost building a Rolodex. Do you remember the Rolodexes? Yeah. You almost want to build a Rolodex of subs in each of the different subcontractor areas that you would need, maybe flooring, tiling, the trade.
I have an Excel vendor sheet that I'm building for everything.
Yeah. And then I would, create a system to prioritize your best subs in the different trades, and then have backup plans if those subs are unreliable or don't show up when they say they're going to show up, or whatever. And so it sounds like the biggest thing that could help you, Chris, would be designating time to actually planning out every project. And literally, like, just, you could do that on just a Google Doc, or a spreadsheet, or whatever is going to work best for you. It doesn't really matter. But planning out every single phase of the project when you're going to need the subs than having a Rolodex of subs that you ideally have your favorites, but then other people that you can fill in if a subs lets you down, and always be like looking for new guys in your different areas too. So,
and just one more quick question on the cost plus on the line iteming, like the on the invoice or whatever.
yeah.
What, if anybody, how would you describe that line item? Like what's the phrase that you put in the line item the best? Because to me, you know, it's kind of like I do a lot of the work still. I'm trying to get away from that. But you know, like, oh well, this your labor is included in here, and then oh, on this line item you're getting paid again, and this and that. Like to just not to relay it to the customer.
Yeah. So I again, I want to leave this open for other contractors. I actually joke with the team, and because I want to show up really on all these group calls if I can. And I joke with the team about doing most of the talking, and I really don't want to do that. Chris, what we do is this: we explain up front before we create an estimate how our pricing works. That's going to avoid most of the problems. Then we literally put contractor fee as a line item, and we put project management and scheduling fee as a line item. Right? Yeah, Jordan. Like I like what Jordan just said. Jordan just said, I tell people it's the company's profit. Like if you explain it up front, like you don't have to come up with some creative way to like hide it, you know. And if someone's like, oh, I don't want to pay that, it's like, okay, well, I'll move on to the right customer. Chris,
yeah, I would say too. Sorry, James. He actually was talking about this with me last week, or earlier this week rather, about expectations and how you communicate it up front. Sheesh. How you communicate it up front with a client. I don't know if you had your hand raised earlier to add something, Jay, or if you had a question. So I was going to give you the chance to chime in there if you wanted to.
Oh, well, yeah. So I was just going to kind of add on to what Robert was saying is I'm 100% subs. I do not have one single employee, and they're just going back to that. But those are just guys that I've picked up over the years, and they're just guys, you know, just a painter, just a framer, just a drywall guy, you know. And so, and I try to schedule my stuff out where I'm letting them know ahead of time, hey, I've got this job coming up. Is there every now and then there's a day or two that there might not get something might not get done, but I also communicate that to my customer in the beginning, say, hey, I'm going to schedule this as great as I can, but these are all subs. And so there might be a day that nothing gets done, but that's just because we're waiting on the next guy. But in reference to what we're talking about right now is like Robert said, I'm explaining everything up front. This is how we do business. And, you know, every line item is going to be what it should cost for that line item. And then I get to the scheduling, and this is the scheduling, and, you know, 10%. And then I have it listed. So in Texas, things are a little bit different. I have it listed as a builder fee. And just to get into that real quick, in the state of Texas, if you have a contract over $10,000 and you take a deposit, then that deposit has to go into a non-interest construction account for that specific customer and cannot go into your general operating fund. However, builder fees are exempt. So when I go and I say I want my deposit, quote unquote, I actually just say I get my builder fee up front. And so that kind of eliminates that. But anyway, so it's and so and I just present that, and in that line item it says builder fee, and it says overhead expenses and profit for the company. And, you know, kind of as we talked about last week, if somebody wants to negotiate either my planning and scheduling number or the overhead and profit, it's not a customer you want to deal with. You know, if they're trying to negotiate right. Your worth, you know.
Oh,
so that's how I've been dealing with it.
Yeah.
Chris, you've had your hand raised, buddy. I feel like you got some good insight.
Well, this is just the answer for Chris's question about what type of guys to grab, companies or crews or sub crews. We found it best. I have an assortment of guys. We work with all subs as well. but I have found that keying in on one or two sub crews that are multi-talented, so that jobs that you sell, any job that you sell, would be within their wheelhouse to be able to handle, so that you could pretty much keep one or two sub crews busy almost 100% of the time. And then they are always, even though they're not your guys, and they still may be Jose's remodeling company or whatever, but like they come to you for their business. And usually what works the best is they work for one other GC or one other guy that does bathroom remodeling or whatever, and they work for you too. And then you don't feel obligated that you always have to keep them 100% busy. But they work a lot for you, and you try to keep a very high skilled 2 or 3 man crew busy as much as possible and give them most of your work. And they have to be very multi-talented to be able to handle sheetrock, drywall, plumbing, light electrical, stuff like that. And you can hand them full bathroom remodels, turnkey, and stuff like that. And then we keep them really, really busy nonstop, almost every day of the week, every day of the month, type of thing. And that helped us when we look for that crew, as opposed to trying to schedule a bunch of different companies that do all these different trades. Once we've looked for and found those type of really high skilled crews, and I pay them a lot. I mean, they're very well paid for what they do to get it done, but then they turnkey it and they get it done for you. So that's seemed to be what worked. We switched to that like 8 years ago, and found those type of crews that kind of look to us. I mean, I have cervezas and beers with the guys and lunch with these guys because I see them all the time, and I know their families, and I know their kids and all that type of stuff because they've been working with me for 5+, 8+ years for these guys. So
are you on a set like pricing plan with them, like, or do they look at every job independently?
We look at every job independently, but at this point there's a level of trust. Like, I just tell them what the price is.
Yeah, that's what I want to get to.
There's just a level of trust, and sometimes we don't even talk about it because we're just moving it straight into the next job, and they just know that they get good fair pay, type of thing. But most of the time we talk about it up front. Hey, this is a $5,000. You're getting $5,000. Okay, cool. Yeah. I'm good with that. And and like you talk about, oh, it's gonna take you 6-7 days, or like, no, it's maybe more work, and you give me another 500. Okay, fine, I'll give you 5,500. Type of thing. And so, and that we talk about it up front. So then I have virtually zero stress. You care less. Like if they're there at 10 o'clock or they got there at 7, they're getting the same $5,000 as long as they communicated to the homeowner the expectations of what time they were showing up or whatever. Like, I could care less. So it's way less stressed if you talk about it up front and tell them they're getting $5,000, and you told the homeowner it's going to be a 7-day, 9-day project. As long as I get done in that window, you're cool, type of thing. So
yeah, I think a theme that I'm finding in a lot of the feedback, which I think is great, which Chris, there's one more question I want to ask you that I think would be helpful for the group in this discussion. But I think the theme and what Chris is saying, what James is saying, even what some of the other people have shared is, if you communicate expectations across the board up front, that's going to protect you from a lot, even if those expectations aren't 100% specific. So something that Chris just said is like, he communicates with the homeowner, hey, we should have this wrapped up in 7 to 10 days. He's saying 7 or 9 days, whatever it was. He's giving a range, right? And that range is enough time where he knows that even if things were to go wrong, that he has some wiggle room in there. James does the same thing. Tells the customer, hey, there may be a day where the sub doesn't show up. So setting your expectations up front, hey, how do I structure my quotes? How do I, manage all this and that? If you are setting the expectations up front, which is just giving a realistic picture to the customer, to your subs, whoever you're working with, ahead of time of what to expect, of how this process usually works, that should protect you. But Chris, the question I want to ask you is, if you can go back 8 years ago, how did you find those subs? Because I think working with like primarily just a couple, like 2 or 3 subs over 8 years for any construction business is like ideal, right? Like that's the ideal. So I'm curious if you can go back in time and think about how you got connected. Was it just through networking? Was it just through trial and error and you just found the right guy? Or
100% through networking. Literally, I take pictures of every van that doesn't look professional enough, that looks like they have a good trade crew that's sitting at Home Depot, that looks like the guys know what they're doing, they have all the right tools on their truck and stuff like that. And then I just call them and I say, hey guys, what's up? I meet them, we go have coffee or something like that. Like literally, if they, you see the Mr. Plumbers out there and they have a nice decaled wrap van, I'm not calling that guy, but I see that guy with a lot of plumbing tools on the back of his truck. I'm calling that guy. I'm meeting him. I might go shake his hand at the back of his truck. He obviously knows what he's doing. He's obviously busy. I go meet him. So a lot of networking. My two top crews came from, one was a helper of a guy that ultimately retired, and I just grabbed that helper and had him mine. And then the other was a guy that worked for me, said, hey, I know a guy. You should probably get to know him. And he became a top crew as well over time. So it's 100% networking. It's just working with a lot of crews and meeting them at the job site, learning who the relationships are. It's like, oh, my brother is actually a tile guy, and he ended up being like my best tile guy ever, and he's still with the crew and all that type of stuff. So it's just relational networking and getting in and really digging into these guys' lives, because everybody knows somebody. They all know somebody, and it may work out really well. So and then some of us, and it is like you said, Robert, like it's a constant. There's always a revolving door. I'm constantly hiring, constantly looking for new. I mean, I still, even though I have a set of crews and even auxiliary plumbers and all that type of stuff, I still snap pictures of small vans with a painted decal on the side or whatever, and meet guys constantly, just because I want to know who's in the area that I work around and stuff like that.
Yeah, and I think what I really liked about what you just shared was, it's like there's an element of this that you found the right connections, they just kind of fell into your lap, but they fell into your lap after you had set this precedent of, I'm going to be intentional of reaching out to people. And if I see a very clearly well branded truck, okay, that's a direct to customer sort of brand, their prices are going to be insane, I don't want to work with them. But if I see these other guys, some people ask me how to find subs, like what's the secret? And there really isn't any secret other than what you just described. You have to reach out, connect with people, call people. And after you do that process enough times, it's going to lead you to new opportunities where you're going to whittle out the subs you can't rely on, to find the people that you really can. So Brandon, you have your hand raised.
Yeah, I was just going to add, in thinking about justifying the project management fee for people that are having trouble with that, think about what the odds are that a homeowner is going to find all these super qualified sub crews, and what the odds are that their project is going to go smooth if they manage it themselves. And tell them the story of like, look, I've been looking for the last 10 years. This is the group of people that I've found over 10 years of hard work to find and manage these guys that have done an awesome job for me. It justifies that fee that you have to put on to make sure that project goes smooth. And for people who are just starting that process, it's hard. It's super hard. But when you do find that right crew that makes everything go smooth, it's not hard to justify that value to the client in the end, because your level of confidence in that project comes across in the sale.
One other thing quick on kind of in reference to that as well is, you're out there finding these subs and you're keeping them busy. So part of your value is my network of subcontractors. But really where it comes in is, if that homeowner had that same list of subcontractors and called them individually, they will actually pay more than for the project overall, because I'm assuming everybody's like me. My guys give me a better price because I keep them busy. If they go talk to a homeowner on the side, obviously not one of my customers, but it's a one-off gig, right? So they're not giving them work all the time, so their price is going to be higher. So that's where what I try to explain the value as of my GC fee is my network of subcontractors, and that 20% is, it comes off of their price because I feed them every day or regularly. So their prices are different for me than they would be if you called them directly.
That's really good. Yeah, and you can apply that towards your material pricing as well, if you're doing cost plus. Hey, as a general contractor, I get special pricing. But for me, I found that like what's more important to the customer that's going to do what I would say a remodeling project that is worth you doing, right? Like what they care more about is someone that's going to solve. They're not wanting to be a general contractor. They're not wanting to manage a project. They're not. That's another full-time job for them. Finding their own crews and anything like that. So the value is real. The value is there. Be confident in it. If the customer is beating you up on it, then they're not going to like the company that they end up finding, because the company that they end up finding is going to be a company that isn't as disorganized, isn't as skilled, and isn't going to do their project as good as you are, with the timeliness, cleanliness, whatever those, unique value propositions are for your business. The person that customer that's beating you up on price is going to find is not going to be anything like you. So that might be another talk worth having here in one of the near future group calls that we do. Is something I like helping people better understand is their value, and what justifies that, and how a price should reflect that value. But anyway, Jordan, I want to move to your question because it's been sitting in here for almost 10 minutes now. What's the longest anyone has felt in the trenches with their service company before finally breaking through? Can you tell us or give us a little bit of context, or do you want to kind of open your mic here and chime in a little bit about this question?
Yeah, sorry, it took a second. I had to give my phone permission again to use my mic for some reason.
You're all good, buddy.
Yeah, so I've been in business 7 years now, and of course, I've only just, I'm still very new with you guys, of course. I love everything that we're doing. I really believe in what we're doing. But there are some weeks, like this week, that you look at all the things that you're doing, you know what you want to get to. And, sometimes you just have those feelings of inadequacy, or like you're not doing something right, or there's something you're missing, and, again, not to discredit any of the work that we've done, because Travis has been amazing. I love meeting with Travis every week. And I know we've already seen so many things get fixed. But this probably, and some of this predates coming to you guys, the last 2 years has just been really difficult. And so there's kind of this feeling of that just hits sometimes, where it's like, man, is this worth it? But somebody told me last night, sometimes it's like there's a wall between you and what you want to get to, and you just keep hammering and chipping away at it. Just keep hammering and chipping it away until you finally break through, and get to, being profitable, to not being the one that runs everything. Hopefully that helps give you some context to that.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Jordan. So
I think it's the emotional side of, and the head side of things.
Yeah, Kevin, I was gonna say, I've got stuff that I can share, but I think Jordan wants to hear from possibly another contractor. So Kevin, you got something to share here?
Well, okay, so little context to our story. We bought this business about 2 years ago. Last year I came to Redmond. It was about a year ago. And we were literally down to our last dime. It took probably 4 months to see the benefits, and we had to let Redmond off because we couldn't afford it. Um, we started seeing the benefits of their program probably 4 to 5 months after we started implement this. We just came back about 2 months ago, and I'm thankful to be back um, because I can see the benefits of the programs. I mean, a successful business is all about putting, and you talk about wanting to not be on the tools and stuff like that. Eventually, that's our goal, right? But you have to have certain things in place to be able to get there. One thing we've started doing to kind of keep ourselves grounded, I guess you could say, is every week we start writing down a couple of things, big, small, doesn't matter, reminders of what went right that week, some big things, just to remind us of those end of the weeks you come to it, or end of the month you come to it, and you're like, hey, this doesn't feel very progressive, successful, whatever. You can look back and see those physical things of, hey, no, we did win here. Hey, no, this did go right here. Hey, look at what happened, at this time of the month or 6 months ago or a year ago, to kind of pull you through those hard times. Because let's face it, guys, business isn't for the meek, right? So not everything goes right. And I'm in that camp where everything wasn't going right, a year ago. And I can say honestly, we've been back for about 2 months, and the progress that we made a year ago, things we implemented, are starting to shine now. Right now that we're back on this program, and kind of Nicole's been pointing us in the right direction again. My phone, literally the past 3 weeks, has been ringing off the hook. Went for holidays for 10 days and I couldn't afford to. And I'm just getting to the point where I've caught up and kind of, but my phone and email is literally going nuts. She told me last phone call we had, I'm number 3 on Google when you search general contractors in our
She
area.
she shared that in our team meeting this week. We saw that as a team. That's cool.
I mean, for me, that's huge. We weren't even on the list, right? So um, it's it's hard when you're in the trenches, kind of, you know, trying to dig your way out of it. But once you start climbing that hill, we're to the point now. I told Nicole this, well, I talked to her 2 weeks ago. We need to hire an office person and a project manager. Those are the two next, hires. And we're to the point now where we have to. It's not can we? I think we have to. So, kudos to Redmond for doing that for us. And literally, when you start implementing some of this stuff, in my opinion, it's going to change how you run your business. So, anyways, my 2 cents.
Yes. Well, Kevin, thank you so much for sharing. And I think it was a big one that you were able to take off 10 days and job still ran. The phone was still ringing, which is why we're going to get an office manager, but that's a win in itself. So just so grateful for you being so coachable, Kevin, and where we're headed this year.
Yeah, I don't know if other people have stuff to share for Jordan on this. I really, Kevin, appreciate you sharing that, and I'm really glad to hear of your turnaround. But Jordan, I think part of it is just that, like, it's almost like to put it in maybe a metaphor. It's almost like whenever you're doing anything right for the first time, the start of that can be really tough. Whether that be, learning a language, right? So I recently went to Europe, and like I went to London, and then we took a train. You can take a train from London to Paris. And on the train to Paris, I realized that I knew zero French. And I also like had this like cultural understanding or impression that like people in France, like if you don't put any effort towards learning French, it can be like a hard time. Like they can give you a hard time. So I was like, okay, these people are gonna like French fry my rear end if I don't learn French. So like I just tried to learn some basic phrases. And for the first couple of days there, like it felt awkward and felt bad because like I was mispronouncing stuff and I'd forget stuff and like people were correcting me on stuff. But then by the end of it, like by the end of the trip, there was like this cafe. You know, there's all these like kind of street cafes in Paris. And I told this waiter that I wanted to practice my French with him. So I like ordered, like I greeted him, I asked for a table, and I ordered our entire meal in French. And he responded parfait, which I thought had to do with yogurt. But in French, it actually means perfect. And so he gave me this like great compliment. And it was because I had to intentionally put myself in these very uncomfortable situations and embrace them in order to have that experience. You could also say the same thing about working out. Like if anyone tries to work out and you haven't worked out in a long time, like it's going to be a while, you know? And the reason why I like working out is because it's almost like a better literal comparison to growing a business. Like it may actually be a few months of working out before you actually start to feel like you're in shape, before you actually start to feel like you're strong again, before you actually start to feel like, you know, you're not sore. And so what I'd tell you, Jordan, is that emotionally it is tough. You know, it isn't for the faint of heart. That is the pain that comes with the beginning of doing anything great. I was listening to an interview yesterday with a musician that I really like. I was just, you know, it was later in the evening. I was just running some errands last night, listening to this interview with this guy. And this guy just released his first album, but he's you know, a well-known artist and, you know, this and that. And he was talking about how he was like, yeah, a lot of people don't realize this, but I've been at this for 8 years, you know, before releasing his first album and getting all this attention. And it's like he has this overnight success impression. He's like, no, I've been doing this for 8 years. He's like, I used to like sit in my parents' basement. He's like, I left my accounting job. I wanted an accounting job because I wanted job security. And I used to sit in my parents' basement for years. And he's like, I would make a new song every single day. And I'd send that out to all these record labels every single day. And they would tell me no every single day. But I just did it. He's like, I just was committed and I just did it every single day. I would make a new song and every single day I would send out a new track. And he said, finally, one day, you know, this company said, we love this song. We want to offer you this deal. And that's where things, you know, began to really take off for him. But it literally took, and I was just listening to this yesterday, it literally took him, like this guy who people think he's an overnight sensation, it literally took him years and years and years of making these songs, getting all these no's, getting rejected, living in his parents' basement, questioning himself, questioning if he'd ever make it, questioning if he was really any that good, questioning until he really had this big breakthrough. So I think of that as more of a universal law, and what you're experiencing, and it's very normal, but what you're experiencing is like part of like you can call it the sacrifice, the trade-off. It's like the thing that you are willing to give to get this greater reward. From a practical perspective, I really think you need to be marketing in a higher populated area. Like that's like kind of a practical thing. Is I think that I forgot which suburb that you're located in, but I know I've looked at it before. From what I've seen, you are already marketed as well as you can for the most part in that suburb, and we need to go to higher populated areas where there's more opportunity and from a practical perspective. And I know that you and Travis have been talking about that and working towards that, but that's what I would say is your lowest hanging fruit, is expanding into new markets.
Yeah, I just want to read what Dale with Arnold's Plumbing put into the chat, because I think it's a good testament, Jordan. And I think that if Dale could start this process of growth at the stage of business that you're in right now, if he could go back in time, he would. But he said, he used to be a one-man show running my business from home. I'd been in business for about 20 years. I called Urban Growth about 5 years ago after a referral by a fellow plumber. We now have 4 trucks in the field. I have 9 employees. I own a 3,200 square foot warehouse that we work out of, and I do not go into the office unless needed these days. Cannot say enough about how much confidence it gives us having a coach to guide us on this journey. And if you ask Dale, Jordan, are there still frustrations with his business? Absolutely. I mean, I'm sure he could put in the chat that Dale calls me once or twice a month, madder than a hornet about something, And so, like, are there still challenges in his business? Are there still times where he feels like, oh my God, I'm still in the trenches? Absolutely. But it's going to get easier. There's always going to be challenges, but you are going to see the growth. I love what Kevin said about recognizing the little wins, those process wins. If you're only focused on that big goal, I want to be Dale, where I'm not having to be in the field at all. I only are in the office 3 days a week. If you're obsessing over that and you're not taking a moment to recognize the little wins, the growth that you're experiencing, those process wins and goals, you're always going to feel like you're failing. Progress feels like failure when you're in the middle. And so when you're in the middle, it can be disheartening. But if you're paying attention to those small wins, to those little goals, before you know it, you're going to be like Mr. Dale Eads over here. You'll still have challenges, but you'll be able to have a lot more time freedom, financial freedom. So Dale, I really appreciate you sharing that.
Yeah. Thoughts, Jordan?
I'm smiling.
Well, that's the important thing.
Yeah, sometimes you just need to know you're not alone. Everybody here has felt what you're feeling, buddy. Just stick with it. Set some of those small goals, instead of just looking at the big one. Vent to your coach. We're good about being an ear when you need it. So
Get prepared, Travis.
Yeah, I also think it's good, and something I want to really encourage, like just openly, almost in the same way that Chris was talking about how he found his subs, is like, it may be helpful, Jordan, Kevin, if you guys would ever talk one-on-one, or any other person that wasn't able to share today, or Jordan, if you heard someone share and you're like, hey, I want to talk more to that person. That's also part of the benefit of being part of our community, of being part of our program, is that when you are owning a business, it is very isolating. Even if you're married, if you have a family, it's like typically you're not wanting to bring all the problems of work back home. You're obviously not wanting to share that with your employees. And you can just feel kind of alone. And part of the benefit of being a part of a program like ours is not only having a coach who's in the trenches with you, but you have all these other business owners who are in it too, who are either there or have been there,
Yeah, that feeling of being alone as a business owner has been one of the worst and greatest feelings probably over the last couple of years. So
Yeah.
I don't miss these group calls for nothing. Yeah, it's been really good.
Oh, we love hearing that, Jordan. Well, if any questions come up, guys, just do not hesitate to reach out to your coach. If any of the conversations today stirred some questions, you need elaboration, whatever you need, that's what your coach is there for. So don't hesitate to reach out. Come next week with any questions that you have so you can get feedback from all of these minds together. But we're going to close out this group call the way we close out every single one, and that's with a 3, 2, 1 growth. So if I could get everybody to unmute for me. Chris, I see you unmuting. I appreciate you. Okay, We're going to do a 3, 2, 1, growth.
Growth.
Thanks, guys. Bye.
Appreciate you guys.